You know, you've got lots of countries that totally respect the sanctity of marriage, the family values, and you know, the fact that when two are joined together, they are no longer two, they are one. And they do not interfere with the sanctity of that relationship by putting all kinds of hurdles and barriers and requirements in front of them, so that you know, people's marriages and families are destroyed, and or citizens are not able to return to their own land, because nobody with family values is going to return to their land and leave their spouse behind, okay? You hear things like, yes, immediate family members will be put at the front of the line. You hear, front of the line. Okay, front of the line. Well, what is that line? Well, it used to be 6 months, but now, thanks to everything that's happening, it's like 1.5 to 2 years. So people have to wait 1.5 to 2 years. This is what I'm talking about. A lot of Americans don't know this. That's why I decided to make a video, because I actually know several families in this position. They're U.S. citizens, and they're not able to return to their own country because the U.S. government doesn't allow them to bring their foreign wives, just jump on a plane and bring their foreign wives back. So you can sit here and say they're at the front of the line, but that's just lip service. And if it was just all about politics, I wouldn't even be making this video. But I know deep inside my soul that this president actually cares about the people, and so that's why I'm making this video. Hi everybody, a while back ago we made a video about, is it time to go back to the US? We had been out of the US, had left the US, and we were talking about, should we consider going back to the US because the new presidency, Trump, was going to fix the US. So we did that video right when Trump became president. He had been president for barely about 6 months or so, or a year. And so now this is like 4 years later, and so we're nearing elections. We're very near new elections again, and so we're going to revisit this topic. So we're going to analyze what we said back then and how it compares to now and what has transpired in the last 4 years. And then stay with the video till the end. I'm going to give you even more insight into how these elections are being influenced. Then I'd love to get your feedback in the comments. So with that, let's get started. So yeah, this Trump guy, you know, yeah, if this Trump guy fixes it, which he's intent on doing that, not everybody understands that this guy, I can remember from 30 years ago, this guy Trump is the most publicly maligned president I've ever witnessed. Was it time to go back then? Well, back then we didn't know. We hadn't seen the fruits. We hadn't understood what the man, he might have had good intentions, but failed, this kind of thing. And he's got a huge mountain to climb because of all the challenges, and so that's not to be underestimated. Still, being a brilliant financial engineer, negotiator that he is, he has done a great job on a financial level. And not to minimize it, he has also done a great job on the personal liberty level, although there's still a lot of work on that level that can be done and needs to be done. And I'm going to tackle that in just a moment. Before I get started though, I want to say that if you're a hater, you know, if you're a hater, just don't waste your time, because nowadays it's really easy to just delete. You know, we just don't have time for that. This channel is not a political channel, meaning we are not going to entertain silly political arguments, but it is educational and instructional. So therefore we will tackle any current events of the day that affect our lives, especially when it comes to living the retirement lifestyle, whether it's at home or abroad. So with that, let's discuss this issue. So back then, he had just become president, and there was a lot of promises being made. So the main idea was, is it true? We spent our whole lives in the US, okay? And when it comes to like politicians, it's always been the same. You get all the promises, right? And then you don't get the delivery, which amounts to fraud, right? Because you were promised something and you then, you know, change for the better, but it's just the same status quo. So of course there was skepticism based on that. However, there was also a lot of people in the comments that clearly, you know, have issues with proper discernment, meaning that it takes a specific outlook to have proper discernment, meaning, you know, you will judge them by their fruits. But there was lots of people that had this kind of strange ideas that they were just really fearful that this new right-wing dictatorship was taking over, and they were gonna lose everything and all this kind of thing. And it's exactly the opposite is what has transpired. Of course, we didn't give into that fear because we understand judging by their fruits. And what have been the fruits in the last 4 years? If you look at like what this president has done, I mean, this man I admire this man, and he has a lot to be admired. And even though I have made other videos where I said that I worship any president, of course, and a guy like Trump isn't our savior. And what that means is that no one is infallible, even a brilliant financial engineer that he is. And he has used his financial engineering brilliance to achieve amazing results, and he's doing things that no other president has done, because we've been watching these presidents all our lives. So and then too, you don't go from $17 million, I think it was, to a few billion because you're no good at negotiating. I mean, he's a brilliant negotiator too. So he's got some skill and some talent there. He's not getting the country into wars. He's making peace agreements with dictators and stuff. I mean, everything, all of the fruits so far have been good fruits. So there's absolutely nothing there that would have substantiated any of the fear, that initially people had. So all of that's removed, okay? And that's what has transpired. And back when we made that video, we were ourselves skeptical because we knew what the past was with politicians. So it's not that we're not willing to give somebody a chance. We're not closed-minded in that way. We always accepted somebody like Trump that made all the right promises. But it was like, I'll believe it when I see it, And two, I mean, the U.S. is and was such a mess. The corruption that exists is deep and entrenched. And as I say, you can't really change people. All you can do is you can put out goodwill to your fellow man. You can love thy neighbor regardless of his color
Well, I think Trump's doing that.
or his belief or whatever. But all those hateful people that were coming out of the woodwork, just pouncing on everybody, they showed their true colors. As far as I'm concerned, they showed their true colors. Just the idea that one person would be able to fix it. But you can underestimate people, and he has built and run a huge organization. So clearly he's got systems. Let me say this. I understand a man like Trump because I used to be a wheeler dealer in my younger days. In my 20s, I started with nothing. I'm the son of immigrants that had nothing. They had language issues, and therefore they didn't become the immigrants that built a huge company or anything. So they came from the poor south of Italy, and so there could have been a little bit of that poverty mentality, somewhat. And so, but being the son of the immigrants and having gone to school, and I'm a reader, and the readers, just branch out. And so I branched out into the prosperity mindset. So I'm just saying that I understand a guy like Trump because I've been there, done that with multiple businesses and that kind of thinking. Now, they were businesses that gave a good lifestyle. I didn't continue and go on because I was called out to be an evangelist. I was called out to be a father and a stay-at-home dad and a husband. I had another mission, so I didn't continue on the businessman's trajectory. I said all that to explain that I understand somebody like Trump, and when he talks, it's very clear to me what he says. And the fact that he does what he says is just another sign that this man is different. And I think a lot of people are seeing that now, that this man is different. A president like this comes around and says, okay, look, I'm gonna fix this place. And so we're going, okay, so this guy says he's gonna fix this place. I'll believe it when I see it. But if he does fix it, is it gonna be time to go back? Because a lot of us left, a lot of people left because they had the greener grass syndrome. And of course, there is some of that. I mean, there is some truth to that. There's the adventure side of it, and the weather and the cost. It's all there if you are really committed to making that happen, which we are and have been on this channel. But even so, a lot of us left because of lack of freedom, lack of liberty, and attack and assault on family values in the States. So yeah, are we gonna pack up and go back after he gets done fixing it? Is he gonna fix the lack of freedom?
He's doing it.
Is he?
Yeah, slowly but surely.
Well, you know, I'll believe it when I see it. And somebody did comment, some people did comment on some of our videos recently saying, well, you know, kind of doing a comparison saying, well, you know, the lack of family values here in the United States, clearly going abroad, there are better, stronger family values. And you know what? Unfortunately, that's true. But it's not just, I mean, there's family values in the States, but there's also an assault on family. There has been for many years. So that was the backdrop. All right, so some of the transitional issues were also and are that the issues in the States were based on hatred, hatefulness. You know, unbelievers like to say you can't legislate morality, but then when they get in power, what are they legislating? Immorality. Like, you know, they think they're going to legislate something and do away with it. Like, you can't do away with hatred by legislating it. Racism, hatred, one group of people putting themselves above another group of people. You know, this is the caste system. You know, there's countries that have that, and there's a cause and effect here. You don't have to be a brilliant scholar of politics to see. You can be far removed from politics, right? And you can just observe with just an impartial eye that there's two sides going on here. The side that has hatred and destruction, and you see it, you know, and a lot of people are seeing it. And then you have the side that just wants peace and prosperity and goodwill, you know, and family values is at the center of that, okay? We're talking about, is the U.S. fixed? Has Trump fixed it? Was it time to go back? And if not, is it time to go back now, 4 years later? And I am seeing a renewed spirit. I'm seeing people that are starting to understand here and there that their faith shall not be swept under the rug. The peaceful people that want to have good side of America, you know, which with family values at the center of it, you know, they're renewing their faith in God, and they're renewing their understanding and their faith in liberty, and that liberty is an unalienable right. It's not removable. You can not remove lawfully, that is, a God-given unalienable right. You can always abuse people, and those on the side of violence and destruction, you know, want to do that. Okay, so let's get into some of the nitty-gritty of the details of this whole picture. So you're seeing that if you're in the stock market, you know that, hey, stock market is doing great. Anytime you reduce taxes in a large way for corporations, those companies that produce the goods and services and hire and give people jobs, you know, they're going to have better profits. People are going to be more employed, and there's going to be more money in the economy. And then, yeah, the stock market's going to go up, and that's great. There's a lot of people, though, that aren't in the stock market. You know, you've got job creation and all these things. They're all financial. But as I learned when I was a younger man, when I was called to have a more balanced life and not to have a distorted life where all my time was spent on business and being more of an evangelist and a father and a husband and a stay-at-home dad and all that thing. So I stayed home and helped my wife homeschool our boys, and we have a family-centered lifestyle, and that is a personal value of ours, and we hold that very dear. And so a lot of the improvements that have been made are financial, and there are some things I mentioned earlier that have improved personal liberty. However, they're still a day late and a dollar short. There's a whole lot that can be done, but I wanted to address today something that I have an insight into that I'm going to share with you, because I happen to know personally several families that fall into these categories, and a lot of times we don't have this insight and we don't know, because a lot a lot of us aren't in those shoes. But in order to understand someone, we need to be in their shoes, put ourselves in their shoes in order to understand them. So look, I'm just going to come out with it, okay? I'm just going to say it. The president has dropped the ball on some of these issues, and I do think it's because he doesn't really have a personal insight and experience in it. And a person like a president is naturally going to, be at the top, and so he's going to be relying on advisors a lot because he can't really be on the front lines all the time, or he wouldn't have any time to make important decisions. It starts out with family values, okay? And family values are important to this administration, and they do mention that when they discuss making America great and all that. And so I know that there's some kind of an intention there to make America great, not just in the way of finances, but also in the way of personal liberty and family values. But in this sphere, there's definitely a lack and lots of challenges and issues. The thing I want to talk to you about today is that when God created man, he created them male and female, and when you read the story, they had children and they started populating the earth, and then the men met the women and they found them to be fair, meaning that they were beautiful, and so they took them on as wives, marriage. So they had a marriage, and so that was part of the creation. And we also know that what God has put together, let not man put asunder. So what God has put together, let not man separate. And so this is at the cornerstone of family values. And I want to say that a lot of people have mentioned, some people have mentioned in the comments, well, aren't family values better abroad? And we say, yes, they are. And you can also gauge family values of a culture, right? If you're thinking about moving abroad or trying to evaluate whether the United States is great enough again to go back or just stay there. And if family values is at the cornerstone of that decision for you, and it should be, because it's part of creation. And if you're single, that doesn't mean you're excluded. It just means that you're still part of the family of humanity. So you see it in the way that cultures and their law systems treat people when it comes to family. For example, you can be a European citizen in most, and it's not just Europe, many other countries. You can see that they value marriage and family much more than the United States, just based on their law systems. So I'm getting into nitty-gritty now for you. And so, for example, all a European citizen has to do is just show up with their wife. A lot of times they don't even need to show them a marriage certificate. You just tell them that it's your wife. But it's okay if a marriage certificate is asked for. It's perfectly fine to carry around a marriage certificate. And based on that marriage, the cultures of most other countries will accept the foreign spouse without any previous appointment, without any kind of hoops to jump through. And that's as it should be. That's exactly as it should be from a culture which exemplifies in its law system that they respect the family and family values. In contrast to that, in the United States, many people complain about the assault on family values that has been going on for years. So then the question is, well, what has this president done about it? And unfortunately, while there may be some things that have been done, it's sorely lacking in the area of immigration. Yes, in the area of immigration, if a U.S. citizen, for example, let me just go here really quick for you. Let's say that a U.S. citizen is married to a foreign spouse, and he left the United States, she left the United States because of loss of freedoms, attack on personal liberty, attack on family values, and all the other things. Maybe prices are too high, whatever the reasons. Now this type of president comes in and says they're going to fix things, right? And he likes what he's hearing. These people like what they're hearing, and perhaps they're thinking of returning. No, it's not going to happen. You cannot return to the United States with your foreign spouse. You cannot just get on a plane and go to the United States with your foreign spouse in most instances. You have to jump through hoops, you have to make application, you have to do this, you have to do that, and that's just not supportive of family values. You can see it in the law system. And I'm not talking about people just got married 6 months ago and, who knows, maybe there's an element of fraud. I'm talking about long-time marrieds, people that have been married several years or even many years, many decades in some cases. And a lot of them have even U.S. citizen children. And so they have a very strong connection to the country. And there's lots of barriers that, anytime you put a government agent that has the sole power over other people to make a life-changing decision, meaning when one government agent can make a decision on whether a husband or wife can be together, whether a U.S. citizen can go back home and bring his wife, immediate family with him or not. Just one government agent can make a decision, yes or no, on that based on a lot of rules that are quite arbitrary, which I'll get into in a second, can be read arbitrarily. So the scriptures say that when two have joined together, they are no more two, but they are one. And that's the whole key takeaway here, is that the U.S. government does not respect that concept by way of not adhering and respecting the idea that when two are joined together in marriage, they are one. They are treated as two separates, and then actually the foreign spouse is treated with a lot of arbitrariness. So let me just go into a little bit more detail for you. For example, I have friends and I have met people that it turns out that a lot of people, now this isn't all people by any means, but a lot of people that have family values and are believers, and I mean no insult by anything that I say. I mean no injury to you if you've suffered some kind of injury in your life. So, but I can't sugarcoat, and I have to be clear about what I'm talking about here. And so I'm just going to say that a lot of people do live a life with one earner. In order to live a more balanced, family-oriented life, a lot of people do revert back to a one-income household, where they are, they live a more traditional lifestyle, where the wife stays home, and just because that's what they have decided that that's how they're going to live. Now, I mentioned this just to mention that because of the one income. Now, this isn't always the case, but in a lot of cases, I actually had friends and have met people like this, and their income's going to necessarily be lower if you're comparing it to some kind of threshold or standard. Their income's going to come in lower. And so, like, I met this guy that he had some acreage, and he had cows on the acreage, and I got to talking to him. I was in his home, and he said, well, I live a very good life, a balanced life, but I don't make much money. And he was making $15,000 a year, but he had his property, he had his cows, he was growing food. In other words, he had all his needs met. This wasn't a high on the hog kind of, but it was high on the hog, because for his family values and his liberty and his ability to be home with and be a husband and a father and those kinds of things. So, but as far as the income, he wasn't complaining. He was just telling me it was just that kind of an income. So if this man's wife dies, and because he decides to go abroad for a few years for all the reasons we discussed, and then a president like Trump comes around and says, you know what, I'm going to fix this place. And then the man that went abroad marries a foreign wife, or married a foreign wife, was abroad for a while, and all of a sudden this new president is changing things around, and all of a sudden it's like, well, you know what, this might be great, this sounds really good, maybe we should go back. He's going to have a rude awakening, because he's not going to be able in the U.S. to just hop on a plane and go home to his own country and take his wife. Now, who wouldn't want to take their spouse, whether it's wife, a husband, whatever? But if he's a European, or a lot of other countries, he can do exactly that. He can just jump on a plane and go back, and all he has to do is show his marriage certificate. So the law system in the U.S. is very capricious in this area, and a lot of Americans are not in that spot. But there's, America is, yes, the administration does talk a lot about how it's been built by foreigners, and there's a lot of foreigners, and America was built by foreigners. And so, all right, so the U.S. is a nation of immigrants, and back in the day when all the immigrants were coming over, there weren't any thresholds, and that's when they needed people. And it's a sad fact of today that perhaps they feel they don't need people as much, but they do always need good people. Every country needs good people. So, you know, making a judgment of what good people is. Well, back then, guess what? People came in and there was no welfare. There was no such thing as people coming in for the welfare. And you know what? People had a choice. They could come in and just appreciate their freedom and maybe just be poor people or people with not a lot of cash, but a lot of freedom. And that's okay too, you know. And so, and then there are those that started businesses and grew them and just became big businesses. So, you know, it can go either way, but one's not better than the other. The U.S. government is, I understand, I said earlier, I understand somebody like Trump from a business kind of mindset. And the thing is, I hope I've made the point that not everyone that fits a certain kind of profile is necessarily a risk for being a welfare case, a welfare cheat. So, you know, maybe the problem isn't really the profiling, because I know we used to live in the Rio Grande, okay? And years ago, this was 30 years ago, and you would see, and I love Mexicans. This is not about saying anything, any kind of injury to them. I love Mexican culture and people. And so, but I'm saying that not all Mexicans did this, you know, but every time we went through the cash register, we always paid cash for our grocery store. Our groceries, we had children and 3 children and everything. But you saw these Mexicans that, the guy would be wearing snakeskin boots and had a big, huge cart full of food, and then he would pull out the welfare stamp. So clearly there's an abuse there, but not everyone fits that profile of the welfare abuser just because of certain criteria that you've put up and said, well, if they fit this criteria, they're probably going to become a welfare abuser. That's just not true. That's just not the case. And I hope I've made all the proper examples to show you that that's the case. I get it, you know, keeping out criminals and things like this, and immigration, and people have a tough stand on immigration. It's understandable. You know, you got criminals out there, terrorists, drug dealers, this and that, gangs. That's understandable, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about normal people. And so a lot more people than ever have gone abroad, and a lot of them have taken foreign wives and this kind of thing. So this kind of a scenario shouldn't be dismissed, because it's getting more and more common than ever. And, you know, these people may not have a voice and be heard. And it's not that you have to have a large number of people that are being, you know, abused in this way. Because, as you know, as the parable says, that the shepherd has 99 sheep. If one sheep falls into a ditch, how happy will he be when he goes and just gets that one sheep out of the ditch and saves it? So it's not a question of numbers. It's a question of, even if you destroy one person's life by these issues, then, you know, what are you really accomplishing? You know, so to go into detail in this specific area of immigration, I'm going to tie it together. Like I said, I'm going to tie all this in, how it could be. Now, Trump is probably going to win this election. I'm going to get to this in a little bit. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but the thing is that you've got California, Texas, and Florida that have an awful lot of foreigners, okay? That's the part that, you know, I mean, it's all of it is the part, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of foreigners there, and if you don't pay attention to this, you know, you could end up losing those states over it. And although we do think that he's probably going to win, so it's a really important matter. It's not just politically important. It's important for the people. And I see a president that cares about the people and wants to do things for the people. And there's an awful lot of people, you know, in California, Texas, and Florida that, you know, fall into this category. I have met people in Ecuador, the spouses of people that were separated because new policies, this and that. You may say, well, they must be doing something. No, I'm telling you these simple facts that I'm explaining to you in this video, like just the income thing. I think that the president understands that there are criminals and then there are pseudo criminals. because he himself has pardoned people that had disagreements with government. Now, these people did not hurt anybody. Please understand, I'm not condoning or promoting, any kind of violent behavior or, just the kind of behavior that wouldn't be acceptable. But there was a disagreement, and they were abused by government over there in Oregon. I wasn't following that very closely or anything, but I understand that the president has pardoned those people. And so I know that the president understands the issue between there are criminals and then there are pseudo criminals, especially in a system that's kind of like the system that's coming down now with the COVID. A lot of people don't understand. But if you read anything with Ayn Rand, that she grew up in communist Russia, she understands that in communist Russia, you pass thousands of different little tiny laws, like you got to wear a mask, you got to social distance, you got to social, this, you got to, and the more laws you got, then you make a lot more criminals. And the more criminals you got, you can collect more fines, throw people in jail, blah, blah, blah. They're doing that in Ecuador, okay? So we'll talk about Ecuador in a different video, but I'm just saying that back even just as late as 20 years ago, regarding this immigration issue, you had to be a real criminal in order to be a removable, what they call removable alien or inadmissible alien. So like for example, right, back then you had to be like a drug dealer or a violent criminal, but now any little thing and boom. But here's the thing about that, with this communist system that's coming down with the masks and everything else, and plus all the other things, let me make a quick example. I don't want to lose you on this. I just watched a video about some people that I see a lot of people renewing their faith, coming together, having meetings out in public. And this lady got on stage and she said, now she wants to be a really good citizen, so she called up the county over there and asked them, hey, can I have a yard sale? I don't know, I think that's going overboard, but she did this. And I guess with everything that's going on, she wanted to be sure. And so they said, yeah, go ahead, And then, so she had the yard sale, and then later they came by and they gave her a ticket. Now let's just say that somebody like that decides that based on principle, and this is the idea here, this is not about lawlessness. I realize that people that stand on principle are rare and they're not super common, but I think that the more this kind of a system comes down, you're going to be seeing a lot more of these type of people come out of the woodwork, and you are seeing it. And also, just the system itself creates a lot of criminals. I understand that the United States has the largest prison population for nonviolent crimes as a percentage rate in the world. Okay, so how can you say, for example, if this woman decides based on principle, well, I'm not going to pay the ticket because this is absurd and I'm going to make a stand. Did you know that Henry David Thoreau, listen to this, Henry David Thoreau, do you know who he was? He's a poet. He didn't just write poetry though. Henry David Thoreau inspired Mahatma Gandhi. You should know that. He inspired Mahatma Gandhi. Now, he wanted to be a writer, Henry David Thoreau. And so they passed an unconstitutional tax during his day called a poll tax. The poll tax was unconstitutional. Now, Henry David Thoreau was a poor man. Had he married a foreign wife and tried to come back to the States, he would have never been able to come back to the States because he was a poor man. And yet there was no welfare back then. But Henry David Thoreau went to jail rather than pay the poll tax. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying that there are people that will stand up to the wrongs in this world, and there's just other people that just cannot absolutely always be completely 100% always obeying every single 10,000 laws. So especially in a kind of system that is intentionally trying to trip people up and turn everybody into somebody that's going to pay a fine. The other thing is that the U.S., we can say the U.S. is the greatest country in the world, but then you go compare it to other countries. So is it the greatest country in the world or not? Because if it's okay to compare the greatest country in the world to other countries when you're trying to make one point, then it's okay to compare it to other countries to make another point. And so if you say that you want the U.S. to have immigration systems like Canada and Australia, then you can also say, you know, you've got lots of countries that totally respect the sanctity of marriage, the family values, and you know, the fact that when two are joined together, they are no longer two, they are one, and they do not interfere with the sanctity of that relationship by putting all kinds of hurdles and barriers and requirements in front of them, so that you know, people's marriages and families are destroyed, and or citizens are not able to return to their own land, because nobody with family values is going to return to their land and leave their spouse behind. Okay, so that's just not acceptable. And if you find yourself telling yourself that, and you hear things like, yes, immediate family members will be put at the front of the line. You hear front of the line. Okay, front of the line. Well, what is that line? Well, it used to be 6 months, but now, thanks to everything that's happening, it's like 1.5 to 2 years. So people have to wait 1.5 to 2 years. This is what I'm talking about. A lot of Americans don't know this. That's why I decided to make a video, because I actually know several families in this position where they are not able, they're US citizens, and they are not able to return to their own country because the US government doesn't allow them to bring their foreign wives, just jump on a plane and bring their foreign wives back. So you can sit here and say they're at the front of the line, but that's just lip service. It's not true. So immigration is a hot button issue, and I do want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it with the insights that I have based on the people that I personally know and their personal situations. And remember, I'm just one person, and if I, on a personal level, know several you know, families that are in this situation, how many more families are there out there with this situation that you're not hearing from? That's the real question. And you know, you've got California, you've got Texas, and you've got Florida that have all those foreigners there. And you know, you can sit here and call people illegal aliens, but let me say something about this, because a lot of people get this wrong. Here's the thing. What God has put together, let no man separate, right? So do you really think that you're going to sit there and get in the middle of God's creation, and people aren't going to have like this strong desire to be reunited with their families? Okay, it's like this. It's like saying the presidency wants everybody to go through the official gate, right? That sounds normal and acceptable, doesn't it? Law-abiding, it sounds normal, doesn't it? But it's like this. Let me make an example to you. It's like saying that a married couple is, let's just say for example purposes, and a lot of you longtime marrieds will know what I'm talking about. Some of the younger ones might not get it at first, but listen, I know that you will get it. So it's like the wife saying, okay, I trust and expect you to be monogamous to me, and I expect you to be faithful, and I expect you to have your sexual needs met through me, your wife. All right, it's like saying that, but then the wife is always gone. She's always working. She's always at work. She's running a business. She's at work. She's working long hours. She's under a boss at work. She's goes shopping. If she's not working, she's shopping. She's never around. So that part of the marriage, there's an expectation that you have to come through the official channel, but and the requirement is that you're saying, well, you need to come to me for the marriage bed, but at the same time, you're not really available. And so the parallel is to say to people that, yes, we expect you to go through official channels to come in as a legal immigrant, but at the same time, we're going to arbitrarily decide, or we're going to put all these conditions on it so that we can destroy families, and we can just leave an important decision like that up to one government agent, that he's got all of this discretion based on all of these rules, that they can just have all these reasons to say no, and that's acceptable according to the law, but it isn't acceptable according to the creation and the kingdom of heaven, because what God has put together, let no man separate. And so to expect these people to have their families separated and destroyed, and then to just sit tight and be told, no, sorry, you're going to stay out, and then not expect them to try to come through some other way. I hope you can put yourself in somebody else's shoe today, and I hope I made this message really clear. And if you still don't get it, don't lash out with hatred, okay? And just try to understand that there is another side of the story, and that's what this channel has always been about, not sugarcoating. It's informational and instructional, and we're giving it to you like it really is. And this administration has totally dropped the ball when it comes to this issue, and it needs to be mentioned, and it hurts itself. He may still get elected, and you know what? We really admire this president for being a man of his word and doing everything he said that he's doing, and doing all of the things that no other presidency has done. But remember, no one's infallible and no one has all the answers, and that's the purpose of this video, is to enlighten, to elucidate, and to inspire, and to uncover, and to shed light on these issues that people are going through and are suffering. Because when it comes to the family, breaking up families is primero importance in the kingdom of heaven. So has Trump fixed America? Our family values coming back to America? I am seeing people just getting a renewed faith and a renewed spirit, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. And I know that there's still a lot of bad and a lot of negative, but the way to get past that is to spread more good so that good can spread and grow. And I'm just really happy to see Americans coming out of their shells and doing the right thing. Peace and love and grace from our Lord. I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of it. Let's have a conversation in the comments. If it's a little bit too emotional for you, please hold back and come back on a different day. Have a nice day, and thanks for watching.